those who are watching this channel for the first time. This is the Me Hill Formation Center in Nairobi, St. Joseph's Formation Center. And today we have something wonderful we are bringing to you. It's an interview we are going to have with a jubilant who is celebrating a Ruby Jubilee being a missionary priest. And you are going to know that person in just few seconds. Right now, I'm going to welcome our guest for today, who is very much pleased to be with us this moment to share about himself and to tell us more about his missionary journey as a Hill missionary priest. Welcome very much, Father Leon. It's a great pleasure to have you in this channel. How do you feel today?
Well, I'm quite honoured to be interviewed on this occasion.
I can imagine that. You might begin by telling us, I've mentioned it's Father Liam, but your full names and a little bit about your family background.
Well, I'm Liam Joseph Durrant. Liam Joseph, I was named after a priest who was William Joseph, and my auntie was his housekeeper, and he was a great friend of the family. He was from Ireland, and so they named me after him. And I grew up in southeast London, and we first grew. Uh, we first lived near the River Thames, and and then we moved from there, and we moved to another place, and eventually we settled in a nice area further down the river called Abbey Wood, and that's where I grew up from the age of 8. And there I went to primary school, and Catholic primary school, and then I went on to Catholic secondary school called St. Austin's, named after St. Augustine of Hippo. And the land was given for the school by the Augustinian Fathers of the Assumption. And I find it very great coincidence that our Pope is Augustinian, and it brings back memories of being at that school. Um, when I left school at 16, I went and joined a bank, and I trained as a chef. And when I qualified, I then decided to join Mill Hill Missionaries because I had wanted to be a missionary priest since I was 11 years of age.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. Before we go to you joining Me Hill, I would like to hear about your parents. Your father, your mom.
Oh,
Were you raised up by both of them or by one?
no. Well, my father and mother were married in 1947 after the Second World War, and there's three of us, three boys, and my mother died when I was 8. So my father, who was 60 when that happened, he brought myself and my two brothers up. He looked after us, and he cared for us very well. Made sure we went to mass on Sunday. He cooked and he cleaned and he washed and he ironed, and he took care of us. And I was the youngest of the family. So that was my background. And we have friends. We made friends in our new parish of Abbey Wood, and that's where I really felt I belonged, and I can call home.
Wow. From the background you have given about your family, your parents, very much Christian and very much Catholic. Even the school where you did your primary education, it was very much Catholic, and the environment you live in was very much Catholic. How did that really inspire you to think of becoming a missionary priest?
Well, in my primary school, we had sisters teaching us, and they were for the La Santa Union, or Holy Union Sisters. I believe they're in Cameroon and Tanzania. They're French order, and they ran our school, and there was a very strong Catholic ethos, and that continued in my secondary school. It was run by lay people, no religious, but it's a boys' Catholic secondary school. We had prayers every day, we had mass every week, and there was a very good RE program, and so that sort of nurtured my faith. But also we had a very good parish, and our parish priest was very forward looking. He involved the parishioners in the parish. We had a parish council, we had small Christian communities. Um, I joined the young Christian workers in the parish, along with some of my school pals, and we would go away on weekends. We go on weekend retreats, camping, holidays, and we used to visit the Carmelite Friars in a shrine in Aylesford, which is down in Kent, and that's a lovely place. And there, the friars also came and gave us talks. So my faith was nurtured in the parish, and we looked on our priests. We had three very good, dynamic, pastoral men, prayerful men, spiritual men, and they were like friends. And I could always go and talk to them. I was always welcome to visit them, and it's in their example of priesthood and caring for people and serving the people. They were men of prayer, plus the fact that my auntie was a housekeeper to a priest. So I was also influenced by priest life and saw them at work. And that really drew me to the priesthood. And it deepened my faith. And also, my auntie, she taught me to pray the rosary, and that I have done ever since I was a boy of 5 years of age. I've always prayed it. Um, so I can say that it was the family and parish background, school environment that nurtured my Catholic faith and helped me grow in understanding of what a religious vocation or to the priesthood or to the missionary life is about.
And striking enough, you didn't join this the congregation of the priests who were working in your parish. I guess they were not missionaries.
No, they were secular priests.
Okay.
And one of them, before he became a priest, he was going to be engaged. He was engaged to get married, and it didn't happen. And he entered the priesthood at a later age. Another priest, he was an Anglican priest for 10 years. When he was a boy, he had an accident, and his right arm was severed in this road accident. And when he came, he was a fascination for us kids. A priest with one arm, how does he drive and how does he say mass? Well, serving him at the altar, I soon learned how he coped, and he coped very well. He was very able to cope with his disability. He was a Cambridge graduate, and after 10 years in the Anglican church as an Anglican priest, he decided to become a Catholic, and that was through having a Catholic girlfriend.
Oh.
And she got him interested in the Catholic Church. Well, she didn't marry him; they didn't get engaged, I think. And he pursued the idea of becoming a Catholic and a Catholic priest. So he was accepted. He went to Rome to the Beda College for late vocations. There he studied, and then he came back to work in our diocese. And we were very fortunate to have that man, Father Charles Walker, wonderful. And he was the one who got us involved with the Young Christian Worker movement. And there was another priest, an young Irish priest. He was very influential, and he got me to go to a boys' camp run by the St Vincent de Paul Society. And I was 16 when I went on that camp, and I was cooking. I worked in the kitchen.
The chef.
And I used to go there right up till I was about 35. Even when I was a priest, I would go there and cook and be one of the for the boys' camp. And that also nurtured my vocation as a young man, an adolescent, because I saw priests and committed lay men, young men and older men, working with underprivileged children, and it just made an impact on me. So I'm very grateful for that.
Wow. What an inspiring childhood, and growing up as a young person in that context in the parish, very much involving, pastorally oriented, with the priest you encountered. what about can you tell us about the first Mihi priest you encountered and whom, in a way, must have pushed you to want to become a
Well,
Mihi?
I was on holiday at my auntie's house, the housekeeper, and uh, there was a lady in the parish who taught in the parish school, and her brother was a white father, and he knew my auntie, and he came to chat to her, and they were sitting chatting, and I met him, and he told me all about his life in Uganda. So I said, "Ooh," and so I like that, and I thought to myself, yeah, I'd like to do that. Before that, when I was in primary school, we had a book, a history book, and in it there were photo or pictures of Benedictine monks preaching the gospel in England when St. Augustine arrived from Rome to reconvert the Anglo-Saxons. And that attracted me. I said, oh, I'd like to do that. When I met this white father, or missionaries of Africa, as they call themselves now, it really inspired me. And I said, yeah. So anyway, I said to my auntie about it, and she said, well, there's an address for the missionary college in London on that mission box. So I wrote to the Mill Hill missionaries, and I wrote to the vocation director, said I'm interested in more about the missionary life, and it all stemmed from there. And it was a white father, but I never joined the white fathers. And when I was working in Uganda, I actually met him, and I said to him, were you ever in Manchester? And he said, yeah. And I said, I remember meeting you and talking to you, and you inspired me to be a missionary. And he said, and you're a Mill Hill and not a white
No, my
father.
father.
And I said, no. That's it. But anyway, it doesn't matter who does the job as long as it gets done, as our founder said. Yeah.
So with that, it shows when you applied, you were taken, you were accepted to begin formation.
Yeah.
And which year was that, and for how long did
Well,
formation take?
as I said, I wrote to Mill Hill when I was 11. They kept in touch. I used to go for weekends in one of our houses in England, and I met other Mill Hill missionaries. And of course, they tell you their stories of their work in Africa and India. And when I was 16, I said, I want to be a missionary, but I want to go to work and get a trade, because if it doesn't work out for me in formation, I have something to fall back on. And my careers teacher at school said, it's a very good idea. I said, well, I'd like to be a chef. So I applied for jobs, and I was accepted in London, and I did an apprenticeship for 3 years. And during that time, I said to Mill Hill, I don't want to be in contact, just leave me. I just want to concentrate on what I'm doing and life and that. But all the time I was thinking, does God want me? And it was in prayer, I used to think about it in prayer. And that. So when I came to the end of my apprenticeship, just before I qualified, I had a letter from the vocation director, a man called Father Jerry Todd. And he said, Liam, you've been in touch with us since you were 11. Would you like to come up and just have a chat about things? So I went up and I had a chat with him in Mill Hill, and he said, would you like to give it a try and try your vocation with us? So I said, well, I qualify in June. And he said, fine, I'll arrange for you to have an interview with the rector of Rosendale. At that time we did philosophy in Rosendale. But he said, in the meantime, you think about it until Easter and then give me a definite answer and then come up. So I did. And in actual fact, going home on the train after meeting him, I said, I want to do it. But I waited, and then I wrote to him and I said yes. So the interview was arranged, and I met Father Matt Carpenter, who's still alive. He's retired now in Ireland. And I was accepted for formation in 1978. So when I told my father, he was not pleased at all. He said, what? He said, well, I thought you gave that idea up. I said, no. He said, no. But anyway, I can remember not long before I left, my father called me to me and he said to himself, and he said, "Now listen, if this is not for you, do not be ashamed of coming home. There's no shame in that. You try it, and if it's not for you, just come home." And then he added, "And I will miss you." So I left in 78. My mate in the parish took me to the station, and somebody came with us, and they put me on the train, and they got the boat to Holland, and, and my formation journey began there.
Wow, what an inspiring beginning. God works in wonderful ways, and from being a chef, now is turning the whole show around, turning the boats around, becoming a missionary. And how long was your formation?
Well, in those days, it was 7 years. We did 2 years philosophy in Holland. Then we went to Mill Hill to do our theology, which was 3 years at that time. But after 2 years, we took a break and we went on MEP mission exposure placement. And I came to Kenya. Well, we only went to Kenya, and I was stationed in a place called Oriang in the Diocese of Kisii, which is now the Diocese of Homa Bay. And I was with an Englishman called Father Bill Rawlingson, was in his 60s when I went there. And I was there for 2 years with the Luo people. And I learned Luo, and I used to visit the homesteads and the community service on the Sunday. And I learnt the language as best I could, and I just enjoyed it. I just being there. And there were five of us. I think there was 5 or 6 of us in Kenya at that time on mission placement, and we would meet up every few months with our supervisor or coordinator and share our experiences. And then when that came to an end in 1984, we returned to Mill Hill to continue our final year in theology.
Wow.
And in 85 January, we were ordained deacons, given our appointments. And then in September of that year, I was ordained, 28th of September.
Wow. Before I come to the ordination, you mentioned coming to work in Kenya was the first time interacting with the African continent. And how was the experience for you with this? These are new people, a new culture, new food. You're a chef, and then the food of the Luos. Kenya is full of ugali, sukuma wiki, and all that. How did you cope with that as a student?
Well, I remember getting off the plane in Nairobi, and I looked, and everyone was African, and I said to my companion, I said, "Oh my God." I said, "We're the only white men here." And he said, "Well, yes, you're in Kenya, you're in Africa." And that was a shock at first, just being a minority. Although we had West Indians and Africans at home and in London, many of them, but actually being in an African country and culture was quite different, you know. And then coming to Oriang in Western Kenya, yeah, Father Rawlinson said then, Bill Rawlinson, he said, "Well, give yourself time." He said, "Don't worry about things. It takes time for people to settle." And the people are very nice, and especially the kids come to see this young Muzungu, this white man, and the little ones who look at me and then they burst out crying, you know. And when I put my mask on, they used to think I was a nurse or a doctor to give them an injection. I think that's why they were crying. But yeah, it took a time, but by Christmas, I felt at home, and I enjoyed just going around visiting people and meeting people, and at that time things were a bit different than they are today. For instance, a bottle of Tusker beer was only 5 shillings. You know, so you imagine 5 shillings for a bottle of Tusker.
These days is 300.
300 now. Yeah. And when I came to Nairobi, Nairobi was half the size of what it is now. And all the road systems I have, it was very different. It was still had a lot of the colonial influence, you know, the buildings and things. And there were a lot more white Kenyans here. But coming back now, I notice it's very different. Nairobi's doubled in size. Buildings have high rise and there's flyovers and there's all sorts of things. It's changed quite, and the traffic is has tripled in volume since
Right.
those days.
That's
So
right.
yeah,
So one can really witness a massive development with
yeah,
Kenya 40
yeah,
years ago, imagine. And September 2020, September 1985,
yeah,
that's the 28th of September, you were ordained a
yes,
Me Hill priest.
that's right.
And 28th of September this very year, 2025, clocks exactly 40 years as a
40 years,
missionary
yeah,
priest.
yeah.
How is that for you? How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm quite amazed how the time has gone. You know, it only seems like yesterday I was celebrating my 25th Jubilee, and now it's 40, you know, and yeah, it's a lifetime. It's nearly a lifetime, and looking back on it, it's very good.
How many appointments, missionary appointments have you had,
Oh,
or do you still remember the places, how the appointments,
yes.
how you received that first appointment? How was it for you?
Well, I remember our Superior General at the time, Bishop DeWitt, he called us up to his room in Mill Hill, and he said, "Where would you like to go, and what would your preferences be?" Um, anyway, he just listened to us, and we chatted with him. After we were ordained deacons on the 2nd of February, Candlemas Day, which happened to be my mother's birthday, so it's a very special day. Um, we were called up to see him, and he gave us our appointments. And he said, "You, Liam, and Michael Corcoran, you're going to Soroti in Uganda. Liam Gandhi, because he went to Pakistan, and Jerry McGill was sent to the Massa here in Ngong. So we were given our appointments, and so having been in East Africa, and I had visited Uganda when I was a student. I went to Tororo and Mbale for a week with one of our priests, and stayed with men there. Um, I had an idea of Uganda, and at that time, Uganda was just going through a very bad time. You know, they had President Amin in power for a few years, and the whole place went down. And then there were other presidents, and I remember going into Tororo Rock Hotel for a meal with the priest that we were staying with, and they gave us the menu, and we said, "Oh, we'll have this," and he said, "No, out of stock," and all that. So we're going through the menu, and there's nothing there, and they said, "Well, what have you got?" And he said, "Well, we've got matoke and pork chops. We'll have that then," you know. And you went round the shops, and some shops had nothing in them. And other shops may have a load of toilet paper, and another week they'd have toothpaste, and it was very difficult for the people at that time. So I was aware of what we were going to, and we were sent to the Ateso people further up, which is bordering onto the Karamojong tribe, which borders onto Sudan. You know, so there's that. So that was our appointment, first appointment. Unfortunately, that appointment didn't last long for me. We arrived in January 1986, and the first weekend we were there, I was there, I was appointed to a place called Bukedia. There was a coup in Kampala, and the president was ousted, and the president now, Museveni, he took over. So all the soldiers of the former president were fleeing, and they're going cross country, and they're going up north, up to northern Uganda. And that first weekend on the mass, those soldiers came to the compound, and as we were just finishing mass, they came into the church and ordered us off the sanctuary. and we stood on the step of the sacristy, and they were asking for this and that, and I was with another Mill Hill priest, and who spoke Luganda, well, and he Lugandan, and he was talking to them, and they got very aggressive, and they kept asking me for my motorbike, and I said, I'm new here, I have no motorbike. And at that stage, one of the soldiers just got the gun, clicked and put it to my head to shoot me. And as he did it, another soldier pushed the gun away, and the gun fired, and the bullet hole went in the sacristy wall. And I can remember the ringing in my ears from they stole the car and they left. But for about 3 or 4 weeks, we couldn't go out because there was all these marauding soldiers, and there was a lot of parishioners killed in that time. And I remember sitting in my room in mission. I thought, oh my God, what have I come to? Baptism of fire. But you got over it, and the one incident that really I remember and I always talk about was during all that time. The women would come and collect water at the well in the compound of the parish, and an old lady called me over. So I went over to her and she said, Lapalon, Father, Yalamanoy, thank you very much, thank you very much. And then she started going on, and the other women were nodding and patting me and all that. And I just stood there and smiled. And a sister came, one of the local sisters, and I said, well, what are they saying? She said, she's saying, thank you for coming. And I started to laugh. Well, thank you for coming. So, oh, it's been a pleasure after what I've been through. And I said, no, Father, she's saying, we've had many years of unrest and turmoil. And when we see people come and work with us, like people like you, we've given hope. We feel God hasn't forgotten us. And I thought, wow. And when I went back, I thought, I did all those years in theology and philosophy and everything else. And that old lady summed up what our missionary life is about, to bring hope and to be a presence of God for people. And they were a presence of God for me as well, because they often came to the house, the people, to talk and tell you the news and say not to worry. So it was, that was a very interesting experience. And then eventually I got malaria, and I got loads of bouts of malaria. I had cerebral malaria twice, typhoid, pneumonia, and I was in and out of hospitals in Kampala and Truro and Ngora. And then eventually the doctor said, you'll have to go home. And by that time I was very thin. I had lost an awful lot of weight. So I went home after 8-9 months in Uganda. And that was the end of my mission career, because the doctor in England said, you can't go back to the tropics. So that was it. I thought, well, what am we going to do? The Bishop de Witt, our Superior General, he came and he said, now Liam, what's the news? And I told him, he said, I can't go back to the tropics. I can't go back. And I said, does that mean I have to leave Mill Hill? And he said an interesting thing. He said, no, you made a commitment to us, and we have made a commitment to you. You will be okay. We will find you something to do. And that was it. That was what happened. That was my first mission appointment, and in Uganda. But having said that, I like Uganda, despite all the negative experiences, not bad as I like Uganda. It's a beautiful country, and the people are lovely, So that's something I treasured.
Yeah, as we are talking, I'm able to pick out one keyword which you have mentioned: hope.
Mm.
Giving hope to the people you are sent, and in just this first missionary appointment which you had, the people of Uganda where you serve, they felt your presence brought them hope, and we are celebrating the Jubilee year of hope.
That's
and it is
right.
the year you are clocking 40 years.
Yeah.
Is it a coincidence?
Well, I think the Spirit works.
That's how the Spirit works, actually. And those challenging moments, I think they defined and really gave you a new view of what mission is all about.
Yeah.
The red sash which you wear every moment, the reminder that life you have given it for the utmost, and it could be taken by that bullet you mentioned.
Mhm.
And I remember in one incident, you one mentioned you went to Uganda, and you had to visit that church to
Yes,
see.
I did. Yeah. Well, later on, I was appointed to go to the formation in Ginger for a year. So the students went off to Mbali. We all went off for the day to Mbali to have football matches with Mbali College. So I said, well, while you're doing that, I'm going to take the car and then we go to Bulgaria, which was up the road. It was a few kilometres up the road. So I went there and drove into the compound, and there's the house. And all that, had to walk around, and my room was more or less the same. Exact same curtains, everything was the same. And then I went over to the church and I stood at the sacristy door and I looked to the left and there was that bullet hole still there. And I took a photograph of it. And then the catechist came, Bonaventure, and no, Boniface, his name was Boniface, that was it, not Bonaventure. And Boniface I said, take a photo of me pointing to the hole. So he did. So it's somewhere at home, that photograph. But yes, yeah, it was good being back in Uganda in that time as well.
That just also how most of our missionaries they lost their lives in places of war. Remember, there is Cosmas from Kenya, Cosmas Ondari, who was sent to Cameroon, and he lost his life in the Anglophone crisis there, also in the church premises, and he was there with the Christians who had run to the church for refuge. And many more missionaries continue to give up their lives for the sake of the gospel. And Father, you in your missionary appointments, 40 years. In this past 40 years, you seem to have not what you have done, but I want to know is you seem to have been so much involved with formation. I know you have worked in Malaysia, you have worked in different places, but your life seems to have been summarized by formation. Can you mention something about that?
Well, I spent, when I came back from Uganda, I was in hospital for a month or so. And then they gave me a job, an appointment to do vocations work. So I was working with the vocation team. We were scattered in England and Scotland, one in Liverpool, one in Durham, one in Scotland, one in London. And we had our areas to cover, and then we come together. And that I did that for 5 years. And also during that time, I got involved in retreat work up at the Master's House run by the Vincentians. I did school visits called caring church visits, where priests and sisters and lay people, committed lay people, go into a school, Catholic school, and take RE lessons, and do assemblies, and we'd have mass every day and prayer, and we'd have an exhibition of all our work, different apostolates and different societies. So I did that for 5 years. And that was wonderful because that gave me an opportunity to meet people. It also, I met friends during that period who remain my friends ever since. And also during that time, I did chaplaincy work for the Royal Air Force as well. So I had all sorts of openings, and it was wonderful. And I always remember when I was in hospital, it's the Kathleen, the doctor who's looking after me in Kampala. She said, having to go home. She said, God has something else for you to do at this moment. So don't worry. And that was that. So I did that for 5 years. And then they said, we'd like you to do a course. So I went to Ireland to do a postgraduate course in ministry, pastoral ministry. And during that time, my classmate was home and he was helping out with the formation in Dartry in Dublin. And he went back to the mission. So I said, Lynn, would you help? And then they appointed me for a year to do formation work with the students. We had English and Irish students, and then one Indian student came for his formation there. And then that 1 year turned into 7. and that towards the end, I did more studies, and I got an MA in pastoral theology and ministry and spirituality. I trained as a spiritual director for the Jesuits. And then I was asked, would I go to the Philippines to become the rector of the Formation House, first cycle, and that's where I went. So I was there for 4.5 years. Then I was asked to come back to England for a year to do formation. Then I went to Uganda, to Ginger, to do formation. And then I was given a sabbatical, so I had some time with the Benedictine monks. And then after that, I went back to the Philippines for another 7.5 years in formation, or longer, I can't remember. And then they said, well, will you come back to England? And then I was appointed and elected regional representative. So I did that for 3 years. And then after that, I went to Malaysia. And after 5.5 years, I was asked by the present General Council, the Vicar General, who was one of my former students, he said, would you go to Nairobi? So I came here in 2023 in the January to continue formation work.
Wow.
So that's how it's been, you know. So that's
So you see, in your 40 years, you have formed, I'm sure, more than 40 priests.
oh well, I
A
formed
good number.
many of our leaders, and I can always remember, and I'll say this tomorrow in my sermon. One of our priests said to me, "Now you be careful how you treat these students, because one day they may end up being your superiors." Well, they are. They are superiors in Malaysia. 2 of them were on the General Council, and most of those were my former students or recruits. People I've been working with, Father Francis, he was my student in Ginger, and Dominic and Hilary, they were here as students, and I gave them their retreat when I was in Ginger, came here. So there are a lot of people who pass through my hands. So, you know.
So when you look at all this, how do you feel? I'm sure this constitutes the joyful moment which you have when you look back these 40 years of missionary work.
Well, regarding formation work with students, it's been a privilege to journey with young men and women, because I was in Ireland, I was in charge of the novitiate course in Ireland for a number of years, so that was included female novices and male novices, as well as people like ourselves. To journey with those people and with young men wanting to be missionaries to give themselves to Christ is a great privilege and an honour. And it's also a great responsibility, because I realise that, I have to give an example and be an example as well. So yes, it has been, and it was the last thing on my mind that I would ever do, formation. The last thing, and yet over half of my 40 years as a missionary priest has been in formation. So I think this is where God wanted me, and that's the important thing, doing His will. Faithfulness to doing God's will, as our theme of the week is this.
Faithfulness to doing God's will, and I think all of this would have been very much successful without prayer. And in your souvenir for this 40 years of Jubilee, you have quoted our founder, Herbert Kajinavon, who says, become a man of prayer, and I will make you an apostle of service. And I don't know how, when you look at the 40 years of missionary work, how do you see God coming through for you in all the places that you have worked, be it in formation, be it in the mission areas?
Well, it's interesting you bring up that point, because as I mentioned to you, my school was called St. Austin's, and it's named after St. Augustine of Hippo. Now, when we were in the 5th year at secondary school, we were allowed to go out at lunchtime. And often I would go to the church on the hill at the back of us, on the main road, called Our Lady of Grace. And she's the patron of the Augustinians, I believe. And I would sit there and pray during lunchtime, and also, thinking about what I'm going to do, my exams and all the experiences, as an adolescent. you sit there, and I was praying, and I would pray the rosary, or I just talk to our Lord in the Blessed Sacrament, and that was me meet and praying and things. So that was simple. And I think that has helped me all through my priesthood and my missionary life. It hasn't been easy. And often when I've had moments of difficulties and uh, problems, that there's always been somebody there to support me. God has always sent somebody who I could connect with and share, and they were my spiritual directors, if you like. They journeyed with me, and they helped me keep focused in prayer and the reality of prayer, and talk about things with God, what's going on in my life, not just talk to him what I think he wants to hear, but no, what's going on, and and just putting yourself as you are before him. And St. Teresa of Avila, she said, prayer is simply being with somebody who you know loves you very much, and that's God. And I think that has sustained me, prayer. And for my time with the Benedictines, 6 months, I just had a 6 month sabbatical. There was time in the office, and there was Lectio Divina, and there's manual labour, and you had time to think and read and pray. And that also was a great benefit for me, you know. It was something that really helped me to focus on who I am before God and for others. And that has sustained me throughout my 40 years. And also, it's helped me to say yes to the requests of our superiors. And I remember as a student, I was talking to one of our rectors, and he said, Liam, you've come here to discern the word of God, and to do it. And I've never forgotten that. To discern God's will and to do it. And I think prayer has helped me to discern and to have the attitude to follow what God wants of me. There are times I didn't feel like doing that. But I said, well, this is what they want, and this is where God is, and this is his call on me through my superiors to do this and this. And that's it. And I think in this way of life, you put yourself at the service of people, at the service of the society. We don't join just to do our own thing. We come to do what we feel God is calling us to do. And that is made manifest to us, is revealed to us through our superiors and the circumstances of our life. And we must be open to that. Otherwise, you'll be very unhappy, and you'll always be frustrated. And I said, that's not what it's about. I wanted to be a priest, a missionary, and this is what it entails. And fine, I do it. I get on with it, knowing that God will give me the grace to do what I've been asked to do and do it to the best of my ability.
That's right. And his grace has really been sufficient for this past 40 years. And they say life begins at 40. And I'm just imagining after 40 years of missionary work, do you feel like, is the energy like you're still newly ordained? Or do you feel tired?
Well, do I feel tired? Well, sometimes you get a bit weary, but you have to break and have a rest and everything. And that's where prayer and reading and just uh, taking it easy regenerates you. Okay. Um, Now life begins at 40. Yeah. Well, I just hope that my future, I can continue to do what God wants me to do, that as revealed through my superiors, what they want me to do, um, that I would be faithful to it, and I'd be a good witness to what I'm about, and more importantly, a good witness to the person of Christ, who I hope people will experience in me as I work with them and journey with them and meet with them, and give me the grace to recognize the presence of God in the people I meet, whoever they are, whether they're Christian or Muslim or Hindu or pagan or whatever, that I will also recognize the loving presence of God in them, because after all, we're all God's children, made in His image and likeness, and we must respect that and honor God by honoring what He has created.
I think we really congratulate you, Father Liam, for
Thank you.
40 years of availability, 40 years of loving service to all the people you have been sent to work with, and especially in the formation center like Nairobi here. I think we are very much grateful, and we think it's a blessing to have had Father Liam come to be part of the formation team here in Nairobi, and you have been a father. Yes, so sometimes the students don't say it's a super formator. So you have been a father to all who have passed through this formation house, and I think we'll continue to pray for you and your classmates. It's
Yes.
very much important to know that our General Superior, Father Michael Corcoran, is also celebrating 40 years this year. He celebrated already, and he's a classmate of Father Liam and many others. And we remember some classmates who have also gone ahead of us.
Yeah.
You still remember their names, and
Yeah, well, as I heard Father Liam Ganley, he died. He was on the General Council. He died of an asthma attack. And he was ordained in 1985 on the 11th of August, the Feast of St. Clare. And he died, I'm not sure, was it 2022, on the Feast of St. Francis. And Liam was a very gentle, very compassionate fellow. He's a nice chap. And I thought, well, what a coincidence. Ordained on the Feast of St. Clare and died on the Feast of St. Francis. No? Another one of my classmates, he left and got married and he was happy. Um, uh, uh, and that's right, out of the 11 that joined, of that group, 7 were ordained. One of those went to the Dutch diocese. He left us in theology and went and joined the Dutch. He was Dutch, he joined the Dutch diocese. And there were 6 of us who persevered and were ordained. And so that's quite a record, actually. So anyway, thank you very much for.
we congratulate you.
Yeah.
We congratulate you, we congratulate your classmates, and we keep praying for those who have gone ahead of us. And maybe your last words as we draw this interview to a close. I just want you to maybe a word to those people who have journeyed with you, like the Christians, the friends of Me Hill, who have supported you in your mission, and the family members, a word for them. And maybe you can also end by a word to those who are coming after you, missionaries who have, some of us have just taken perpetual oath, and I think we need a lot that we are looking up to, and I think you are one of those we are looking up to in inspiring us to mission.
So
A word to the friends of Me
all
here.
right. Well, I'd just like to say thank you very much for your generosity and your prayer and your sacrifice, because without you, we couldn't do this. And that's not only for the people here in Kenya and Uganda and other places, but also in England through the APF Missio organisation, which I worked on when I was at home. Um, uh, your prayers and your financial support keeps us going, and it's good to know that we have people supporting us, and we pray for you every day. And for family and friends, they've put up with me not being around, and then I come and I go away again. Anyway, thank you for your support and for all the priests and sisters and ordinary married men and women families that I've known over the years who have just been good to me and have supported me in my vocation and accepted me for who I am. And I thank them and thank you for all that. For those following after me, well, you must do your best. You must pray and be open to God what He wants of you. This may not be for you, and God may have other things for you to do. But just because you don't join Mill Hill and become a missionary, you're still a missionary. To be a Christian is to be a missionary. So whether you're married and a family man, or a mother and a family, and all that, that is a mission. You know, to pass on the faith and to be a Christian witness uh, in our world today, and that's very important, particularly today when the family life is under threat. Christian family life and Christian values are very much under threat. To have dedicated, informed Christians is important, and that's a mission for all of us. So just do your best and be open to whatever's asked of you. Remember, you don't just come here to do your own thing, you come here to do God's will. And God will use the gifts you've got, and you will discover in yourself you have a lot more than you ever thought you had. I did in my life. So it has its ups and its downs, but God is there and He will help you. And give yourself to Him and the service of the gospel, and you'll be happy. You'll be happy.
Do your best and do it well and discern the will of God. I think those are the key words which bring this interview to a close. And one of the things I must remark about Father Liam, which you might not be aware, is as he's just newly ordained, the energy is there, the vigor is there, the voice is there. He sings the preface, and he really celebrates Mass with all the dedication all of us who are following to understand the mysteries which we celebrate and to celebrate them worthily and reverently. Therefore, we want to appreciate all of you who have been able to follow this interview. We ask you to continue to pray for Father Liam, to pray for his classmates who are celebrating 40 years. And we thank God for the gift of his vocation, all the people he has impacted in his life, and all who continue to journey with him and to pray with him. We wish him all the best as he look forward to celebrating the Jubilee Mass tomorrow. We wish him all the best, especially as he's still here with us in Nairobi in the Formation Center, hoping that God's will continue to be done in his life. And whenever he has that opportunity to be able to interact with any of us, you always be for the best and for the greater glory of God. Thank you very much, Father, for accepting to be part of this interview. And we wish you all the best as you look forward to celebrating the Jubilee Mass tomorrow.
Okay, well, thank you, Bonaventure, and it's been a pleasure to answer your questions. I hope you got some insight into my life. And if there's any young man or woman thinking of serving God, don't be frightened. Give it a try. Okay? Go and see what the Lord wants you to do. I can only encourage you if it, you know, it's a happy life, it's a good life, um, and it's a rewarding life, but it is challenging, and you must accept that, the cross, accept the cross, but no cross, no crown of glory. So they go, and so to listen to this, as of our blessed you.
Thank
And
you very much.
thank you.
Help us. Thank you very much.
Thank
See
you.
you next time in our next episode.
Now, I'm not going to watch that. Oh, you still got it on.